Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. I am so excited today. I have an amazing person on today. His name's Kenny Akers. Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I want to thank all of you again for all your support. You guys have been amazing. Thanks for believing in me. I mean, we just hit the 80,000 download mark, and I pinch myself, but it wouldn't be possible without all of you guys. I want to thank our sponsor, Veracity Networks. Thank you for believing in me as well, and for helping us get this message out. Kenny Akers, I want to give a little background on Kenny. He was born and raised here in Utah. He loves to camp, snowboard. He's very athletic. He's a vegetarian. He's also, he's a Black American, but we were just talking off mic and you said, but I consider myself an American. And I really love that. And we'll talk about that. You were an honorable combat veteran for 15 years, a military police officer, an anti-terrorism instructor, firearms weapon instructor. This is pretty amazing stuff. You've traveled to 52 countries. Obviously, Hawaii, San Diego, Japan are some of your favorite places.
Yes.
You're a husband of 10 years, a father, and also a grandfather.
I am.
Wow, you look too young to be a grandfather.
There's some benefits to, to being a minority, and I think that's one of them.
Well, yeah, you definitely look way too young to be a grandfather.
I appreciate that, sir.
Kenny, I can't thank you enough for being willing to come share your story. You've been all over the news as of late because some kind of in my opinion, an act of greatness, I like to say it that way, that you did here in Salt Lake during the protests / riots that were going on. And I can't wait to hear more about that. But before we do that, I want people to kind of get to know you a little bit.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your upbringing, about your family.
So much fun, right?
Yeah.
We all got a journey.
Yeah.
And here I am expressing mine, which is a pleasure. And thank you for having me on your show.
You're welcome.
It's an honor, and I dearly appreciate it. I've listened to a few of your podcasts in the past, and I really appreciate what you're doing, spreading love and, getting people informed, in their heart, which is a beautiful thing. So you're definitely doing your part as well. And
thank you.
For us to connect today is definitely the right thing to do. So
yeah, great.
Yeah. So a little bit about my past. Born and raised here, Hill Air Force Base. Okay. So my father was an Air Force guy. Okay. And, he kind of did his thing there and decided to move out to Kearns, Utah. So, I got to speak about that a little bit. Because everybody from Kearns is pretty boisterous about that.
Yeah. Well, people look at that. That was a rough area. And, how'd you handle that? And it probably was a lot rougher than most areas.
Well, the perception of it's kind of weird because, my father took a lot of pride in that, coming from the Air Force and buying a new home out there. It was brand new. My father and I've had very intimate moments with my father sitting across the street on the curb, and watching our house being built. So this was a brand new community, brand new home. So it wasn't by far at any means run down. I mean, it was like the spot to kind of move, for the, maybe the working class or whatever the case may be.
And you probably didn't know any different either at the time, right?
Sure.
So you're thinking, this is great.
Yeah. It was beautiful. We had a brand new home. We was blocks away from Western Hills Elementary School, and that was within walking distance. I try to tell my kids now I had to walk uphill both ways, which I actually did. I tell the story every time, and they try to believe me. But yeah, so that was good times for my father. That was a pride time. And I went to an elementary school. Speaking of Western Hills, I went to an elementary school that was predominantly white, of course. Right. There was a lot of things that were going on in my youth. In regards to that type of exposure. I think when I speak of this indifferences that we all have when it comes to racism or, segregation, I mean, you got to think of my time going into elementary school. I'm 47 years old. So, 1975, I'm starting kindergarten, which is at the tail end of, the civil rights movement. And, if you're from Utah, everybody kind of jokes around Utah is about 30 years behind everybody else. Right. So that was an interesting time. But being such, I can't say young man, I was a boy at the time. I didn't really know what was going on around me, or and the excitedness of some of these things, or things that were being said to me. But here I am in elementary school.
Right.
And those experiences were far and few between, the teasing, the bullying, there's been certain little incidences, spit wad stuff and,
right.
and all that kind of stuff. But again, that didn't really faze me, and I didn't really let it bother me too much as a child, because, there was a little bit of fire in my pants too. And,
right.
I would get back after him, and that's always kind of been inside there. And I think that's part of being a boy, and that kind of comes out, and so, I would find myself more in trouble than they would, because, I was always on the defense. And
usually the person that gets in trouble is the one that retaliates, right?
I tell you what, man, I had my fair share of that. So,
yeah, right.
And, I kind of got viewed as the trouble kid, and I was the disruption in class, and those type of things, because of the behavior that would happen. And it wasn't just from the students, it was from the teachers too as well.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of painting that picture, it did inhibit my education. I was a tough reader in my later time. It just, because it was more about, going out to recess and showing some, defense to incidences that were happening. I was more focused on, okay, who am I going to get in a fight with at recess today?
Right.
Or something in that nature. I wasn't really paying attention to, 2 + 2, and my mind kind of shifted to a defense mechanism rather than, being open and educated.
Yeah.
So that kind of built a different type of character of me at a very young age. And so both parents in the home, very prideful home. My dad, coming from down south, he was a Bama boy,
okay.
So there was a lot of pride with that in our home. And, back during the 70s, my mother was that peaceful, that hippie, type of history with
right,
her, which was a beautiful thing. So
sure.
I definitely had two different types of spectrums growing up when I was a child. And, when I timestamp the elementary school time and I try to bring my parents into it, it really paints a perspective that, my dad did carry a sword, if you would, but he was a 6'9" man.
Oh, wow.
He was almost about 300 pounds, at his prime. He was a big dude, he wasn't a hefty guy.
Right.
You're thinking 6'9", that 300 pounds set on him really nice, so he was a pretty persuasive man,
I can imagine.
So
probably commanded the room when he walked in.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so my father really didn't have to say much to get too many people's attention or respect, So it was something that just kind of naturally came about. And as a child, I observed that, and the beauty of my mother, and the love and the compassion that she had and the way that she spoke about incidences. Neither one of my parents ever came into any perspective and ever said, hey, you're going to be treated different because of the color of your skin. My parents didn't try to enable me in any sort of way, and they didn't ever bring it to my attention.
Interesting.
I think I probably brought it more to their attention more than they had, and I remember there was a lot of pride in my house. I remember there was an incident that I was going to school, and it was in the winter. And, the kids, of course, being kids,
right.
and I remember I caught a snowball. They were throwing snowballs, and, I caught a snowball across my face. And I think you might be able to see the scar. There's like a flat, straight scar on my forehead.
I see it,
and that's been with me for a long time. And I remember this incident where a kid threw a snowball, and it had a rock in it. And it was kind of funny. Not the incident was funny, but this is the funny part. When I went home, because I was bleeding straight down my face, and it was all getting on my clothes. And back then, it was butterfly collars and bell bottoms, and corduroys and stuff like that. So Yeah. I remember going home, and we used to sit down every night for dinner. And it was a very important thing in my household. My father believed that we should all sit down. My sister and I, and my mother and my father, we all sat down and we discussed matters in the home, which any home should, right? I mean,
Should
those
be
are
done. Yeah.
the values that bring unity and love and compassion, all that kind of stuff. You discuss things about your day and everything. And I remember coming home, and I was so scared to mention these things because my father being the man that he was, I didn't want him to know that I was any type of trouble in school, because I didn't want him to think it was disrupting my studies, or I was being a nuisance in class, because that was a picture that was being painted. And I remember I came home and I had my hand, I tried to do as much cleaning up as I possibly could,
Mm-hmm.
and I put my hand over my head to cover that up, and I was eating dinner at the same time. And, of course, eventually my parents had noticed, and they asked me to pull my hand away.
What are you doing?
Yeah. And the lessons that came from that still to this day, the reason why I bring that up is because, a lot of parents they'll rush down and they'll enable their kids, they'll talk to the administration and they'll say things to them and say, hey, what's happening to my child? You guys have an issue. And they'll turn against each other. And and this isn't a color thing. This is just simply, why is my child being tormented in school? And
Right.
they could have easily turned the parents against the administration and or the parents against this other parent. And now we're combating, we're bringing this, this social problem of throwing a snowball, at a child and receiving some damage. Of course I was cut up a little bit, I've got a lifetime scar to tell the memories and,
Right.
and that kind of stuff. But, that's the fun part for me, right? I get to, I get to have that with me, and we all have those incidences. But the thing I really appreciated most about my parents and growing up during those tough times, post, civil rights movement and dealing with racism and stuff like that, my parents never turned it into a racially driven or biased situation.
Right.
And I look back more now, and I couldn't be more thankful for that, because, I never had my dad stand over me and say, son, these guys,
Right.
pointing fingers, them, enemy, putting those type of words, and you're going to struggle with those folks all the time. My dad would always tell me, okay, well, snowball upside the head, like,
Right.
How are we going to deal with this? Are you going to get quicker on your feet, man? Like, what are you going to do? You going to dodge it? You going to, you come to a situation that, you're going to be a little bit quicker on your feet. So I appreciated that of my father, and then teaching me the value to become stronger than the incident. It's an important thing that I picked up from my father in regards to these particular incidences. I don't really necessarily feel like they covered anything up or hid me from it. I think they just gave me the right tools to manage it.
And what a gift and blessing that was.
Sure.
To not, like you mentioned the word enabling you. It's almost as if, hey, these things are going to happen.
Sure.
And it depends on how you're going to handle it when it does.
Sure.
Right.
I mean, you could take that dial and kind of flip it with any situation. I'm not speaking of this particular incident as it's lesser than, but let's say, for instance, a child finds out they're going to be, in a wheelchair.
Right.
Does the parents wake up one day and say, hey, you're just not going to be able to do the things that other kids are doing? And do you start coming at a negative notion in regards to those things, And I would say no. If I had a child in that situation, I would be the first parent to tell the child, hey, man,
right,
you got a rocket ship here, buddy. Where are we going?
Yeah, I love that.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Totally.
I mean, it's...
Yeah.
Society can be very harsh, and we all know that. I mean, we're adults, and you and I, before we mic'd up here, we talked about family, and we get concerned about how we can prepare our family for this harsh world. And there's not really any change to the harsh world. We're not going to change circumstances that are out there,
Right.
I mean, but we can prepare.
Yeah.
And the same thing I've done with my children, and I'm not trying to sound like the best parent here, but I really think that's key and paramount. If we look at it as an aspect of looking at a child in a wheelchair, you know, even us passing, if you or myself was to ever pass a child in a chair, we wouldn't, you know, we wouldn't think about anything to say to that child. And I mean, how ridiculous would that be? You know, I mean, that would be counterproductive of anything of humanity to say, hey, child, I don't think you could really come into this restaurant.
Right.
You know, the steps might be too high for you.
Right.
You know, and where would that place be in society? So, you know, as I'm painting this picture and merging these things together, you know, that's the difficult part of society right now when it comes to, you know, women's rights.
Right.
When it comes to, you know, maybe the masculinity of man. When it comes to minorities in society. You know, we're not approaching the situations with the kindness and the empathy to understand that there might be some enabling facts to that particular situation. So therefore, we're not nourishing it in the appropriate way. So we know what to do, because I mean, we can bring up a scenario about a wheelchair, and maybe it might be the best comparison, and it may not be, but it kind of maybe grazes the surface.
Right.
So if we could approach things like that in life, then, you know, we all have a better understanding of each other. And I think there's the answer to equality, I think.
Right.
You know, going back to my father and my mother, I couldn't be more appreciative of that, because it takes a very particular individual. Mm-hmm. You know, when you have a child that is blessed with any circumstance, and I call it a blessing because
I love that.
The blessing is a lesson for every single person that's around them.
Right.
And we can bring up any scenario, any health situation, or, you know, a wheelchair, or, you know, ethnicity, or, you know, we could bring up anything. And that's a blessing in itself. Instead of looking at the child thinking they're not going to be able to do the same things, imagine what this person's going to do because of this. Yeah. And we all learn from that. You know, I've learned from kids that were, and the reason why I say that is because you know, there was kids in my school that had wheelchairs, and, you know, and we had ramps in our school, you know, and, and I sit there and think, when I would walk to class, I would see some of my friends going to class, and they would be in their wheelchair, and we're talking about high school, and, you know, they could barely even budge, you know, they could barely even, they had their books on their lap, and they could barely push each other. So, I mean, what's the right thing, you know, coming up to them, hey, do you mind if I give you a little extra push, you know, do me the favor, you're going to have to carry my books because I can't push you at the same time, you know, I got, you know, I got two hands, right. Yeah. So it was kind of a win-win situation.
For sure. Yeah.
You carry my books, and, you know, I'll put the muscle behind this, you know.
Yeah.
And that's the reason why, excuse me, I relate to that scenario, because I did dedicate my time to that. You know, we had special needs kids in our school, and I related to that, and I dedicated time in high school to help those kind of kids, and you know, awesome. And really understood, you know, a different side of it.
And is that really what you learned from your parents? Like, hey, this is the way you should conduct yourself.
Wow. That's a good question.
Or did it feel like more natural of just kind of your personality? Or
I think we're all trying to navigate it. Even now into more of, I like to call it seasoned years of life.
Yeah.
We still navigate it because we still receive information, and we're still challenged, you know, with things. I mean, just like what's happened recently in my life, I'm definitely challenged right now. You know, so I don't know if I've been prepared for this, but I'm still navigating it. Yeah. So I think having a good understanding of self helps one navigate.
Yeah.
Having a strong moral structure.
Right.
Based on the things that you've been taught, and be willing to maybe step outside of those boundaries. You know, if somebody that says don't stick your hand out the window when we're driving down the freeway, you know, you got to kind of challenge that sometimes, you know, be like, hey, what does it feel like to have your hand out the window, you know, and the breeze going through your fingers, you know, you kind of have to step out of that a little bit within threshold, and really test life a little bit, I think. Yeah. So
Yeah, very well said.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's kind of jump ahead here a little
Sure.
bit and
Perfect.
get to some things that have happened recently for
I
you.
love it.
Yeah, and I saw you on Good Things Utah. I don't know how long ago was that? About a week ago?
It's been about a week.
About a
now,
week, not too long ago. And you did something that really inspired me when I watched what you did, and I listened to your story, and they featured you on Good Things Utah. And I just want to give a little background, and then I want to obviously hear your perspective.
Please.
But you stood in front of a 7-Eleven down in Salt Lake City, and you were stopping looters from causing more damage to the business. And, you were saying some things, as I watched the clip, you were saying, you were basically, speaking sternly and saying, protest all you want, but this is the wrong way to do it here. Do not destroy this business, basically.
Right.
No, violence isn't the answer.
Yeah.
You know what? Protest all you want, but don't do it this way.
Right.
And boy, your message was really loud and clear.
Right.
But let's talk about what made you want to go down there. Let's talk about that. And, you're sitting there, you're probably seeing things on television. Talk about like what what led up to that point, and why'd you do what you did?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. I tried to answer that on Good Things Utah, and I couldn't come up with an answer. I try to feel that I'm a God-loving man, and I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
There's an energy or of some sort, there's a force that reckons our soul, and pulls us. And for some reason, I sat at home pacing when this stuff was going on. I was in the comfort of my home, at no threat. I've spent my time in the military. I've done a couple of pushes. I'm safe. I got all my fingers and my toes and everything that goes along with that. So there's no real reason to put myself in jeopardy at this point. I'm looking to live a long life.
Yeah.
Well, as far as at least I can. Right?
Sure.
So I had a couple of friends messaging me and kind of tipping me up, and there was something very strong in my soul that kept telling me to go down there and check things out. My concern was that because of the trigger that had happened, and what forced this to happen was a brutality ordeal. And for some reason, I just felt compelled that it could have or might have happened or will happen to somebody else.
Yeah.
So maybe I had the thought in my mind to kind of protect that, or to maybe, I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't really have the intention to be a rebel and go down there and intervene with the law enforcement by any means, because coming from a military police background, I completely respect the authority and what they need to do with their jobs. But I just thought maybe, I just really didn't know, so I put on some work clothes, jumped in my pickup truck and boogied downtown. And I went down there, and the next thing I know, I found myself in the heart of this thing, and which zero intention, zero. I didn't have any intention to be this mob or this group of people to come towards me, nor did I, understand how I was going to handle any situation. I just really didn't have a plan together. There was zero plan. Now that I look back at it, I'm super thankful that I went down there, because it seems like the corresponding things that's happened in my life has maybe prepared me for that exact moment.
Yeah.
The military training and everything that goes along with that. And there's been a lot of questions that's come up and arise from that. If I was able to stand in one position in front of this angry mob, and I would be lying if I would admit to you that, maybe I was scared out of my boots, because it is pretty intense to deal with a lot of angry people and upset.
Oh yeah. I can't even imagine. Yeah.
So, I just try to be stronger than the situation. And I just wanted to talk it down as best as I could. And if I could stand there as one man and make that change with no plan intact, if I could stand there with the desire of love and compassion for other people, to stand there for what is right, and I moved that situation, I could only imagine what we could do is if we would come together on everything.
Right.
You know, and I really dearly think after that, I mean, that's really what I'm trying to advocate. I'm trying to get out there as much as I can, you know, the unity, you know, exactly what we stand for, the patriots of this country. We should be united.
Yeah.
We should be coming together.
Well, you spoke very forcefully. Tell us about how did the crowd respond to you, and what was anything said to you? Or, I mean, how did they, respond to you saying, hey guys, this is the wrong way to do it. Protest all you want, but don't do it this way.
That was an interesting moment, because I, from my military experience and, trying to, knock off a lot of the rust, if you would.
Right.
It's been a while since I've been in the service. But
right.
to knock off that rust and remember the command presence and the things that go along with that, I kept my verbiage very short and precise.
Yeah.
And, to get that message across, to repeat it, usually takes 3 times or 4 times for somebody to listen to you. There came a moment when I told them to stop, that there was a lead group, if you would, of this mass, looters, if you would. I don't know, because that's even a controversy what we're calling them today now after the fact, but
yeah.
if we want to call them looters or destroying the message or, just kind of tainting what needed to really happen. There was a group behind them, and there was kind of a lead group in front of them. They were carrying these bottles that they were about to light on fire. So, it was obvious that they were about to destroy this place. Looters were going to come in, and then they were going to light it on fire. So, with me, it was just a matter of taking a stand, standing there saying, hey, not on my watch.
Right.
I'm a patriot. I'm an American. I took an oath to defend this country against foreign and domestic issues. I've always taken that oath.
Wow.
And for me, that's what I stood there on, and I recognize it as a domestic problem, because what are we doing turning against each other? We don't grow. Humanity in the United States doesn't grow if we turn against each other.
Right.
It only makes more animosity and more pain. And so, being able to vocal that to them, the one gentleman that was kind of the aggressor, he turned to me and says, you need to tell the police that. You need to tell the police to calm down and not cause, the chaos. And boy, that really lit a fuse underneath my backside, because standing there as a black man, I can completely understand what's going on.
Yeah.
And I felt his pain, and I still feel his pain, and I completely understand the pain. And it was a very controversial spot for me to be, because I don't want to say that I understand the pain, right? And I don't want anybody to get the message mixed up, because there are appropriate ways to do these things, and to cause further destruction. There are a lot of people out there that don't get intertwined interracially.
Right.
And so cameras on, news crews down there, and what do they see? They see a particular ethnicity, or they see a particular face causing this destruction. And then the question arises to them, well, how are we going to fix these problems if they're the ones down there causing the mess?
Yeah.
So the message gets mixed up,
Gotcha, yeah.
And so that I was feeling that as well, trying to understand the situation. And I just was trying to talk them down, thinking, hey man, we can't do this. There's been generations and generations and generations to try to fix this. We can't go backwards.
Right.
And that was pretty much my stance on the matter.
Yeah. Did you, like you said, you understood when that guy said, well, tell the cops this, right?
Yes.
And for you, again, being a black man, you understand that phrase more than I do.
Sure.
For sure. And, cause what I see, I mean, I see what I see on television. You know, obviously what happened in Minnesota with George Floyd was a really tragic thing to watch. And I mean, I would imagine most people would feel bad. I mean, I feel horrible about that.
Right.
But again, I've never faced racism like that. I've never felt, you know, shunned from society because of the color of my skin. I don't know what that. I really don't know what that's like.
You might have in an inadvertent way.
Maybe
There might have, you know, you could have been turned away because of the amount of income. You could have been bracketed based on something, or financial or credit, or you know, that's. I can't really say that's racism, but it's an identifier that'll separate you from maybe a class above you. Yeah.
Well, I guess I've never faced hatred like that, is the way I look. Because you said something really powerful too when you were there. You said, "This isn't the answer."
Right.
And then when you were interviewed after, you were asked, "What is the answer?" And what was your response to that?
It's the same answer through and through, and I try to teach my kids this growing up. It's just simply about love.
Yeah.
I mean, love. I mean, we were talking about it a little bit before on mic here, and you know, the point of masculinity in the man, you know, is that we it's a position of a, you know, we try to brandish this position of authority, but you know, we are the examples of being able to be compassionate and loving towards each other. And we're losing that in society right now. We're losing those identities that are able to take a stand and still administer love without losing the integrity of self. And
I love that.
We need to embrace that as much as we can. And I couldn't be more blessed right now. I couldn't be more thankful that I've been looked at for that, you know, and the right answer is love, you know, and all this stuff aside, you know, those kids that really cause this mess downtown. I even said this, excuse me, before, that I would just give the chance. I would push all this attention aside. I would push the news broadcast. I'd push all this aside if this young man that I was faced, or the two young men with the mob, I would push it all aside to go up to him, give him a hug, and just tell him, man, where do we start?
Wow.
You know, and I, literally, and with the face of that, I would literally push all this aside just for that moment, you know. So the beauty of this cultivating is that now I get to spread that message to hopefully more people that can hear that. Yeah. And I really do hope, by casting out this net of love, I hope it catches him one day. And it caught him too. It caught him there on that moment. Yeah. Because he listened to me, and he turned around and he changed his view. You know, and that's just to go to show you how powerful love can be, you know, and just trying to understand somebody in the most violent situation. Yeah.
Boy, what a poignant moment.
Right. And it works. Yeah. You know, so while I sit here and say, you know, don't be timid to love. Stand on your ground, because it's going to be received. Yeah. You know, and that's what the man upstairs wants. You know, he wants us to embrace that, and he wants us to love and be able to face situations.
That's amazing. You know, I love what you said there. Very well said. You know, something that really hit me hard, you know, obviously social media has been blowing up, and there's all different, and a lot of people are showing a lot of love, right, from from every race, everyone, and there was this picture of this cute, black little girl, and she's holding this sign, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't have it memorized, but it said basically, you know, when we say Black Lives Matter, we understand that all lives matter, but we just need your help right now. Right. And boy, I got to tell you, Kenny, that hit me so hard. I'm like, that's what this is all about. Is that, hey, we're not saying that we need we're something special or that enabled. We don't need to be enabled.
Right.
We just, hey guys, we're suffering here.
Sure.
And it's about time that you guys notice this. And this is what we're saying, that we're part of this too. But right now we need to focus on that we matter. That really hit me hard.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That's a really good one, because man, there's some moving moments when this stuff kind of happens, and we all get to learn from it. Definitely. Dr. Martin Luther King had said at one point in time, that in your journey to try to show the oppressor, and I'm going to also paraphrase because this isn't exact, that while we are working towards civil rights, we are not just doing it for ourselves. We are doing it for them too.
Wow.
So
that's powerful.
Hearing the fact that a black life matters is also advocating other lives matter too. Because how much can we relate to each other? How much can the similarities to, say, a black life being diminished versus a woman's rights being diminished, how we could find similarities in that. They may not be exactly the same,
right?
The scenarios aren't the same, and people are thinking, well, Kenny, those things are completely opposite, and which I'm probably sure they are. But I could probably sit down with a woman that has been suppressed or not treated equally because of her being a woman or whatever the case may be, and we would find some similarities, her and I, in regards to both of us,
right,
in a scenario, right?
Yeah.
And we could have a common conversation about that, and there would be no such thing as race. It would simply be a gender, maybe race, and those type of things. So when you have these other scenarios that are happening out there, because they happen, it's just not happening to black lives, it's happening to all lives, and that is 100% right. What's happening right now in society, and I just think it's very important for the listeners to know that what's happening right now is that, just like any other rights that are out there, black lives are just standing up, or we're uniting. And Malcolm X even said that as well. There's going to be a time that the black man is going to unite over every situation. And that's not a bad thing.
Right.
We're not here to, say, my rights are more important. We just want the same equality.
Want the same. Yeah. It needs to be equal.
Right. And with this push that we're doing, gosh, man, it's going to help everybody else out.
Yeah.
Because the education, the knowledge, the understanding, and everything that goes along with it, these lessons that are being taught, teaches everybody.
Yeah. I look at me, just what I've learned in the last couple of weeks, just, thinking I knew a lot, no, there's a lot I need to learn.
Sure.
And I couldn't agree with you more, Kenny, that I think this is happening for us.
Mm-hmm.
I really do, overall. Because like you said, we all need to learn these lessons.
Absolutely.
And at the end, hopefully we come out ahead and then there is more equality. And,
right.
And maybe it never goes away permanently. Unfortunately, I hate to even say that, but I would imagine what we want, let's see some forward progress.
Absolutely.
in large chunks.
Absolutely.
And let's do some things here that are going to really start making a difference.
Absolutely.
And
that's beautiful.
And I can't agree with you more and it's so simple when you say, well, it just comes down to love, Todd. At the end of the day,
it is so simple.
But it really is that simple.
It is.
I want to make sure not only do I say that I love everybody,
right,
I have to prove it with my actions.
Absolutely.
Don't
be afraid to look me in my face when you see me in public.
Right.
Say hey.
Right.
You'll be surprised. Listen to the conversation you and I are having, you'd be surprised. If you was to ever be timid in that situation, say hello.
Yeah.
Ask me where I'm from. Ask me what I do for a living.
Yeah.
I know politics. Yeah. I know me some good sports too.
Sure.
I could talk a game up, sun up and sun down, and you'd be surprised.
Yeah. Well, we're all the same, really.
Absolutely.
We were just talking about how you're a grandfather and so am I.
Right.
you know, and you know, we have that in common. You know,
Sure.
we can sit here and talk about our grandchildren
Yeah.
here and connect that way,
Absolutely.
and that kind of thing. And you know, what's amazing to me too is if we go back in your story when you were being raised, go back to that snowball with the rock in it,
Absolutely.
and how your parents actually handled it. Like, we're not going to blow this up. We'll figure out what we need to do, but we're not going to make this, let's go, you know, sue the school and whatever. And I think they taught you a very powerful lesson that, hey, some bad things are going to happen
Absolutely.
in your life.
Absolutely.
And unfortunately, because of the color of your skin.
Absolutely.
But yet, we're going to teach you, like you keep saying, you know, you need to love everyone, Kenny, and just how your parents raised. I mean, it just, it's interesting how that's translated to this event that happened in front of that 7-Eleven.
It is wild. It is wild.
Wow.
But
blows my mind.
We all have that journey, you know, and we can dig our face in a book, you know, we can sit here and read the Bible. We can read inspirational books, and we can go all those different things. But when do you actually, you know, we're trying to journey to fly, you know, we're trying to experience the most heightened things in life. You know, we want to fly and see that bird's eye perspective of life. When is it that you finally challenge yourself to launch yourself off that branch and fly?
Yeah.
You know, and you can only be taught so many things until you actually put it into practice. There's got to be the practical part about it. You know, you got to, you know, communicating and talking and all the things that I've learned in the military, you know, being a firearms instructor and stuff like that. I wasn't the most awesome shot.
Right.
When I first shot my first rifle or my first pistol, or, you know, I grew up with the swimming pool, and I thought I was a pretty dang good swimmer until I actually went into the military and found out I wasn't the greatest swimmer ever.
Right.
You know, so then I had to kind of work on those things.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And there just needs to come a time, and, you know, it is scary to love. It really is scary to love, you know, because a lot of people, like we were talking earlier, it diminishes the sense of masculinity, but I think that's the pinnacle of masculinity. Once you're able to truly love and express that and look somebody in their eyes and communicate love, you know, that's, you know, without losing any integrity or losing any face or anything in that, that's the most beautiful thing that any human being can do. And we have to take control of that, because you know, when we're looking in a world, when we went back to a harsh society, why would we ever, as humans, as compassionate as we are, why would we ever want to be dictated by the cruelness and the coldness of society when we are so beautiful inside, and we're such, you know, compelling individuals, and we're allowing, you know, television, social media, and all these things to dictate our emotions. We got to stop that.
Yeah, wow. Very well said. That's powerful. I'm going to quote you when I was watching that interview. You said this, if we love each other, it's the only natural thing to do.
Yeah. I mean, just to capitalize what I had just said there. I mean, it's when you come into this world, you know, what else is there? That's all you have. You're just this cute little bundle of joy, man. You know.
Well, and that's what it reminded me when I heard you say that. It reminded me, when we're kids, what do? We love everything, everybody.
Right.
We really don't see color. We're just like, this is my friend.
Yeah.
Hey, we're friends.
Right.
I love this guy.
Right.
I love this girl.
Right.
You know, and we did it so well as kids, but then what we do as we get older, we start buying into the cultural stuff and the stuff that's happening. And unfortunately, that's part of our lives, unfortunately. But I love your message, Kenny. Love is the answer. And I know it sounds, but it's amazing when we actually try to do it. And like that moment you had with that guy during the heat of the moment. You know, even that connection you had.
He felt it.
You felt it.
I can stand here on my 2 feet. I know he did.
Yeah.
Because he threw his arms up and he said, you need to tell the police that too. You know, to him to be able to reciprocate the communication.
Yeah.
That to me alone told me that he heard what I was saying to him.
Absolutely.
And so he was touched at that moment by love, and he came, you know, luckily to his senses. And he turned around, you know.
Yeah.
And imagine if, you know, going to this whole spark of the incident, imagine if we could teach authority that.
Right.
What if we could bottle that up and just hand it to authority? I'm not saying that they don't get taught that, but you know, you said it a little bit earlier, how society scorns us and it and it braises us and it makes us into different people as we grow. That's a fact, sir, with law enforcement. That's a fact with any profession. You know, we could go to a fast food spot and imagine, you know, the cashier dealing with, you know, unnecessary customers and the backlash of that. And then you come along, Mr. Happy-Go-Lucky, ready to be served this fantastic food, you know, and you're looking for the best experience. And the cashier doesn't necessarily give you the best experience because they've been worn down by the unnecessary experiences. So if somebody that is a cashier at a very small establishment, or maybe just even a big establishment, whatever it may be, how is a professional worn down? Because it happens the same way.
Absolutely.
So they lose the attribute, even though they come into the position of authority with the compelling fact that they want to love, but they get worn down.
Yeah.
And I've been having these discussions for the last week, you know, how do we recharge those people, you know, and how do we soften the PTSD, and how do we soften the, you know, the impact? So these gentlemen and women that are serving our public and saving us in some situations, how do we keep them ready in the heart? We talk about keeping them ready at the weapon, and you know, I could sit here and teach you a few moves myself, you know, and the countless amount of hours that I've been trained, but how do we train love?
Yeah, that's a great question.
You know, how do we teach that individual to always step forward with that passionate situation? Because I didn't have a gun that day. I didn't have a bulletproof vest.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not comparing myself to the authority, but I stood there on my own accord, and I stood there with the courage that was invested in me.
Yeah.
With my morals, and I stood there with a message. And luckily, to my dismay of how this thing could have panned out, you know, I'm able to sit here and talk to you about it today.
Yeah.
And I think there's a very strong positioning when it comes to an individual's stature. And if you can present that stature in front of somebody, the respect is earned.
Yeah.
And once the respect is earned, then you can just bring in the kindness of your heart.
Exactly. Well, that's what I felt when I saw what you did. I mean, I had the utmost respect for what you did and stood in front of that crowd. I wish I could say I was down there doing that with you. But
you are now, though.
Yeah. And that's why I have you on, because I do want to share your message, because it's powerful and we need to hear it. And I've got just a couple more questions.
Absolutely,
I know our time's running out, but you know, what can, like, someone like me, or like even the white community, what can we do better, do you think? Is there something that, I mean, and I obviously the answer is love, and I get that, but is there something that you could suggest that would help us maybe understand a little bit more of, you know, what you guys at times go through? And
that's the $1 million question.
And it's a big one, I know.
It's a pretty interesting question, because you can't read the amount of books, you know. I mean, if I go back to my athletic days, you know, when I used to play basketball, you know, you can learn a move, but you don't learn a move until it's in practice and until you're actually doing it. And you know, I mentioned this before. It's just not the white community that's learning. You know, I can't say it's a good thing or it's a bad thing, because there's good and bad everywhere.
Sure.
You know, so I can't really place that label on the entire white community, because that would just be, that would be intense. You know.
Yeah.
I think if there's an individual out there that's listening to me today and has a complicated part in their heart where they may not see the equality come across, just understand that, you know, we are family too. understand that I am an American too.
Yeah.
And understand that I believe in the same things that you do and the longevity of life. And
Yeah.
I love my wife. I love my kids.
Yeah.
I love my home. I power spray my windows to make sure they're clean.
Sure.
I sweep my front door steps to make sure those things are taken care of and squared away. I wash my cars. I make sure they have, the smell good trees in there. And I am a normal person just like you.
Yeah.
And there is no difference in the quality of life that I am expecting from my children and from my grandchildren. So if, excuse me, if there's any type of message, what any person needs to hear is just understand that we are the same.
Wow.
There are a few bad apples that are out there, and please don't let that change how you view us that are out there doing the normal things that is required of our communities to be stand-up role model citizens and, pay our taxes and earn a profitable income so we can earn a loaf of bread and peanut butter and jelly for our kids, and
Right.
we're all seeking the same thing here.
Yeah.
We're all concerned about the coronavirus and and other things like that. We're just not lingering around in the corners thinking about the next grocery store we can loot.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we're out there, and just understand that,
Yeah.
just because we may look different or sound different or we might be excited about something doesn't change who we are in society. So yeah, we're normal. We're normal.
Very well said. I couldn't say it any better. And thank you for sharing your thoughts on that. I wish I could spend another hour with you, Kenny. Honestly, there's so much we could talk about, and
We're gonna have more time together.
we'll have some more time for
Yes,
sure.
sir.
I want you to know there's much love and respect from my side towards you,
As well.
and I really respect what you did, because that was
Thank you.
could have been very dangerous thing in that moment to do what you did, but you spoke your truth,
Yeah.
and look at all the good that's coming out of it. So
Absolutely.
that just reminds me, man, stand up for what you believe,
Every time.
and then, like you said, the answer is love.
Yeah.
There's love.
Don't ever veer from that. If you believe in something dear to your heart,
Mm-hmm.
do it
Yeah.
and do the right thing and promote that. And I will promise you, excuse me, as if this situation, I stood for one thing. And everybody that has come out of the woodwork to support me on that is the most beautiful thing I've ever felt in my entire life.
Wow.
So believe in yourself, believe the right thing, and advocate that. And yeah,
Wow.
love one another.
Oh, that's powerful. Well, if for the audience that's listening to this, if they wanted to reach out to you and ask you a question or
Yeah, absolutely.
get more perspective on something,
Yep.
What would be the best way for them to reach out to you?
Yeah, I'm super old school. I got the open door policy, right? I was that way in the military when my young troops
Sure.
would come into the office and give me a buzz. But unfortunately, this has been a pretty hectic week, so I can't really put my cell phone out there for
Right.
immediate phone calls, because it has been a wild ride in this last week and a half. So I do have a Twitter. It's my handle is Kenny Akers. That's KENE AKERS. And that's the same for Instagram. And there is also room on that to be emailed. So if you'd like to contact me on there, I do my best to try to be very intimate and respond to people. And,
Okay.
if you feel compelled, friend me on Facebook. I'm pretty much good with that. I've got an alarming amount of new friends.
I'm sure you do.
So
Yeah.
it's been fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you again for what you did and standing
sir.
up for what is right. And
Yes, sir.
I love your message, because I agree with
Thank
it.
you. Thank you.
And I think if we can all just be on board with that, it's not difficult.
No.
Let's just start loving and continue to, from my perspective, I need to listen more. I need to be willing to learn.
Yes.
And, as I'm sitting here listening to you talk, I'm learning, and I'm going,
Right,
wow, okay,
right,
I didn't
right,
think of
right,
it
right,
that way. And
Right.
so thank you for sharing your perspective
Yes, sir.
and being vulnerable
Mm.
and open with your story.
Absolutely. Thank
Yeah.
you. I really appreciate your time today. You're doing a beautiful thing, and I've listened to your podcast, and I got a little information prior to
thank
and
you.
stuff, and you're doing a real good thing, and that's exactly what we need out there.
Wow. Well,
Exactly
I
what
appreciate
we
that.
need.
That means
Yes,
a
sir.
lot, Kenny.
Yes, sir.
Well, there you go, folks. There's Kenny Akers. Thank you so much. So wonderful. I'm inspired. Hopefully, you guys are inspired too. And if anything, let's stand up and make a difference, and let's go show some love today. And like he said, if you see Kenny on the street or anyone who is of a different ethnicity of you, say hello, say hi, ask them about their family, and you might be surprised what you get back.
Yeah.
And I love that. It's like let's get out of our comfort zone a little bit.
Right.
And I think let's all stand up for equality. And I don't know. I just love your approach and your vulnerability. And so thank you, folks. Please share this with everyone you know. And again, thank you for your love and support. I know that love truly is the answer. And I want to say I love all of you for listening to this. I hope you know that. And until next time.
Thank you.